Okay, the first lesson in this angles chapter is about classifying angles. An angle is formed by two rays that share a common endpoint, which is called the vertex. It's where the two rays are actually going to meet. So if we're trying to draw a right angle, we are needing to draw something that's exactly 90 degrees, which would be exemplified by the time 3 o'clock, or you could even do the time 9 o'clock. If we wanted to do something less than 90 degrees, this would be called an acute angle. For example, 1 o'clock would be an acute angle. If we want to do obtuse, it has to be larger than 90 degrees, so we could go for 5 o'clock. If we need a straight angle, we have to be exactly 180 degrees, which actually makes a straight line, so something like 6 o'clock would work. So if we take a look at this bike ramp right down here, there's an angle formed right in here. That is an acute angle, and we can actually identify estimations of what it would be. We know this is going to be 90, so it looks like it's probably about half of it, maybe a little less. So we could put down an estimate of about 40 degrees. In the next part, talking about angles, we're going to actually learn how to name angles, and then we're going to talk about some relationships. So we're going to come back to this box. If you take a look down here, we want to name this angle. So we can name it in a couple different ways. We can call this angle Y, because of the vertex. We can also call this angle XYZ, or we could call it angle ZYX. Or, since there's a number inside of it, we could also call this angle 1. Since we can see that it's less than 90 degrees, we can call it acute. Take a minute to try A, B, and C down here, and then come back and check your answers. There are the answers to those bottom questions. All right, go back up here to this box. So we can talk about vertical angles if they are opposite angles formed by the intersection of two lines. So here you have two lines, and what that does is it actually creates 4 different angles. The ones that are across from each other are the vertical angles. So 2 and 4 are verticals, 1 and 3 are also verticals. What happens with these vertical angles is that they are equal to each other. Math, we call them congruent, so it's an equal sign with a little squiggly over top of it. That means congruent. So when we talk about the measures of angles, we say that their measures are actually congruent. So if you take a look over here, so identify a pair of vertical angles. So here are your intersections. Across 1 and 3 are verticals. The other information that was given to us in this box is also talking about adjacent. And adjacent is when I think next door. Adjacent are your next door neighbors. So they share the common vertex and a common side, and they don't overlap. So if I'm looking at this, angle 1 that's right here and angle 2, here's their common side, here's their common vertex, but they don't overlap, but they are next door neighbors. Okay, there's no real angle relationship necessarily that can come from being adjacent. Sometimes they are going to make a straight line, which we'll use later. So in this example, it also asks us to pick in a pair of adjacent angles. So if I look, I could talk 1 and 4 because they share a common vertex and a common side, but they don't overlap. So angle 1 and angle 4 could be adjacent. So it wants us to identify another pair. So if I'm talking verticals, I already did 1 and 3. Verticals are across, so I could do 2 and 4. If I'm talking adjacent, I already did 1 and 4. I could do 4 and 3. I could do 3 and 2, or I could do 1 and 2. So let's just go 1 and 2. But there are more options there. So what we can do is we can actually learn what we just talked about with vertical angles and adjacent angles to help us find missing values. So in this picture, you have 2 lines that creates vertical angles. Vertical angles are equal to each other. So since this is equal to this, I can say that 2x plus 2 is equal to 130 degrees. So I'm going to solve. 2x equals 128. Divide by 2, and I get x equals 64 degrees. That's one set of vertical angles. Notice there's also this set of vertical angles. So I can say that 3y minus 10 is equal to 50 because vertical angles are equal. Solve my equation. 3y equals 60, divide by 3, so y equals 20 degrees. So we're able to actually solve both of those different equations and solve for x and for y. If you look at the next page, these are actually going to be adjacent angles, and you're going to notice that they create a straight line. We know a straight angle is 180 degrees, so this angle plus this angle is going to equal 180 degrees then. So we're able to write the equation 115 plus 5x is equal to 180 degrees because together they make a straight angle. So we can solve the equation, subtract 115, divide by 5, and we learn that x is 13. Take a minute, I want you to try and work with 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pause the video, come back and check. All right, there are your answers to 1, 2, and 3. That completes the first lesson.